smaller companies moved to $5 million companies, then $50 million companies, now $100 million plus, and even in the billions. And he said he realized that people are essentially the same everywhere you go. I was talking to a friend of mine who coaches the leaders of multi-million dollar corporations. And I asked him, what kind of value does a CEO of a $200 million company want from a business advisor, a coach, or a consultant? And because he said he started off with smaller companies, moved to $5 million companies, then $50 million companies, now $100 million plus, and even in the billions. And he said he realized that people are essentially the same everywhere you go. And all organizations have the same broad opportunity sets and dilemmas. There were three parts to his transition. Number one, initiation, that decision on the inside that he was going to go for charging higher fees, working with more interesting clients. Now, for him, that began to show up by referral. For some of us, we have to do it by invitation. But he felt uneasy. What if the methods I normally use don't work? The second stage, he said, was questioning. And he said, he's more of a consultant. He had some basic diagnostic questions. And he said, I began asking them because I didn't know what else to do. And the answers came back almost always the same as his smaller clients. The only real difference was less visibility from the top about what was happening down on the ground, because the bigger the company, the less of the view that you have. And he said, I used to get an inner doubting voice saying, but what can I possibly offer them as advice? They've got resources and capability everywhere. And so the third stage was advising. He was surprised. He said, I used to ask these questions about them, and I thought they would say, yeah, we're doing that already, or we've got to get a team onto that. But almost always they'd say things like, brilliant idea. We should definitely include that in our board's plan moving forward. And what he said is that what he's learned is that the larger the organizations probably value more than smaller organizations a return to first principles, asking hard questions, and telling truth to power. So he's actually more value to larger organizations than smaller ones. I want you to get that. Whilst he's talking about working with larger and larger organizations, same principles apply working with more and more interesting people, working with more and more successful people, even wealthier people. So I thought, well, let me put on a table, let me offer you some diagnostic questions that you could ask on a regular basis. Like, here's what I tend to ask you, some go-tos. You may already have yours. I'm not saying these are the only ones to use, but here are some to put out there that you could use. Here are 5 diagnostic questions about business. Number 1, purpose. What's your organization's mission? And how does it differentiate you from the competition in the eyes of your best customers? Number 2, challenges. What are the most pressing challenges you have right now? And how are they impacting your ability to deliver value to your clients? Was purpose, challenge, now alignment. How closely do your organization's resources and capabilities match up with those strategic goals that you want to achieve? Number 4 is measurement. What are the metrics you use to measure success? And how do they drive behavior and decision-making? Sometimes our metrics drive us in this direction when we want to go over here. So actually what we're measuring really counts. And sometimes we forget this as leaders, or we've been doing it for so long, we don't realize we're off track. And finally, acceleration. Looking at your growth over the past few years, what do you believe needs to happen to accelerate it, and what's preventing it? Those are some valuable questions to ask. You know, if you study Peter Drucker, he's got his own sets of questions. There are other consultants who have all sorts of different questions you could ask. But I wanted to lay out a handful that could be some go-tos for you around the business. But then what's really key, almost always when I work with a leader who's running a very successful business, we get into the personal. That's why they actually pay you the money. And here are the 4 of the personal ones. Number 1 is legacy. When you look back at your career or your life, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want to be remembered for? And for most leaders, it's not what they're doing right now. That's why that question is so powerful. What do you want to be remembered for? Number 2, what's your biggest fear that you've never shared with anybody? What's your biggest fear that you never shared with anybody? And how's it holding you back from the success that you're capable of achieving? Third one's about intuition. I probably wouldn't use the word intuition with some of these leaders, but I might say something like this. Tune into your deepest wisdom for a moment. Get out of your head, deep wisdom inside your body. What guidance does it offer you about the direction you're steering your organization or your life? What does your deepest wisdom tell you? And the last one's about emotion, and how I'd probably word this one: in moments of quiet reflection, what emotions surface about your leadership journey? And how might those feelings be pointing you towards areas needing attention or change? So when you think about your leadership right now, what emotions underneath it? And see what happens. And for some of these people, it'd be hard to get to those emotions. So they say, I feel frustrated, or I feel good. Okay, tell me more about that. What do you feel good about? What do you not feel good about? You might have to dig deeper with it. Sometimes the negative will take them there. They can't always go to the positive. What are you angry about right now? What's frustrating you? What's really pissing you off? Who's pissing you off right now? Because sometimes that anger is a mask for desire. And you can get to their desires by going for the negative emotions. Hey, thanks for listening. Before you go, I've got over a decade's worth of tools and ideas to help you drastically increase your income and your impact as a coach over at richlitvin.com. And hit the subscribe button, because when you do, you'll automatically get notified every time I release a new podcast episode. See you next time.